The wooden door to Marcus' home swings open gently at his touch. In the cool hush before dawn, the interior of the modest domus is still and peaceful. Marcus pauses on the threshold, listening to the soft silence of the early hour. The air inside is mild and carries a faint aroma of yesterday's olive wood smoke mingled with fresh morning dew. Through the doorway of the sleeping chamber, he can just discern the open atrium beyond, where a square of indigo sky hovers above the quiet heart of the house. All is calm. Marcus steps inside, closing the door softly behind him. By the wan light of fading stars through the compluvium, the opening in the atrium roof, he navigates by memory. The atrium's central impluvium, a shallow rectangular pool, gleams faintly in what little light the sky provides, its water still and mirror-like. Marcus crosses the atrium slowly, each barefoot step on the cool mosaic floor echoing slightly off the walls. Not even the birds outside have begun their first songs yet. In one shadowed corner stands the household shrine, the small lararium where figurines of the family's guardian spirits, the Lares, are arranged. Marcus approaches it with reverence. The shapes of the tiny statues, a pair of cheerful household deities, and a figure of Vesta are just visible in the dimness. He kneels on the smooth stone floor and takes a pinch of offering incense from a clay dish. With a flint and steel kept on a ledge, he strikes a spark to relight the oil lamp that sits at the shrine. The lamp's flame catches and grows into a steady little glow, illuminating the painted faces of the household gods. In the stillness, he whispers a morning prayer. Bless this house and all within it today. He sprinkles the incense onto the lamp's bronze dish. It smolders, and a delicate curl of fragrant smoke rises, pale in the faint light. Marcus bows his head, eyes closed, feeling a gentle sense of peace as he asks the household spirits and Vesta's grace to watch over their home for the day to come. Just then, the first bird of morning breaks the silence. From somewhere beyond the walls comes the liquid trill of a blackbird. Marcus remains kneeling a moment longer, simply listening. The single birdsong is soon joined by another, and then another, a soft chorus building as the eastern sky begins to lighten. Marcus stands and quietly stretches the slight stiffness from his limbs. Taking up a jug from the side table, he pours a little fresh water into a bronze basin. He splashes the cool water onto his face, rubbing away the last traces of sleep. The coolness makes him inhale deeply and fully wake. He pats his face dry with a linen cloth. From the small cubiculum behind him, a rustling sound signals that Livia, his wife, has stirred in their bed. Marcus steps lightly to the doorway. In the gentle gray dawn light seeping through the shutters, he sees Livia still curled under the light blanket, her dark hair spilling across the pillow. She has not truly woken. She shifts, then settles again, breathing in the slow, steady rhythm of deep sleep. Marcus smiles fondly. He decides not to disturb her. It is very early still, and she can sleep a bit longer while he begins the day. He slips on a simple off-white tunic, gathering its fabric with a belt at his waist. The air is a little cool, so he drapes a light woolen shawl over his shoulders. Sandals in hand to avoid clacking on the floor, Marcus steps out through the atrium into the vestibule and then outdoors, greeting the dawn. A tender blue-gray light washes over the quiet street. The sky above the rooftops is just beginning to blush with the approach of sunrise, a few stars still glinting high up where night hasn't yet faded. The air carries a pre-dawn chill and the clean scent of dew on dust. Marcus stands just outside his front door for a moment, drawing a deep breath. The city around him is still mostly asleep. The usual daytime noises of wheels and voices are absent. In this tranquil moment, Rome feels like a still painting, all its movement yet to come with the sun. Across the lane, the silhouette of a neighbor's house stands quiet and dark. Far overhead, a solitary gull drifts, giving a single, lonesome cry. Marcus hears the soft padding of a cat slinking along a distant wall, and the very faint trickle of water from a public fountain at the end of the road. These gentle sounds amplify the silence rather than break it. He decides to take a short walk to stretch his legs and enjoy the cool tranquility before the day fully dawns. Sandals laced securely, shawl around him, Marcus begins to stroll down the narrow street in the direction of the neighborhood fountain. His footsteps are light on the worn stone pavement. Overhead, the square balconies and red-tiled roofs of the insulae apartment houses on his street are still draped in shadow, their windows closed and dark at this hour. As he walks, the eastern sky grows subtly brighter. The deepest blue gives way to hints of rose and gold near the horizon, where the first rays of the sun will soon appear. A cool morning breeze picks up, carrying with it the faint aroma of wood smoke from distant bakers' ovens. Those have been alight since the early hours to prepare the day's bread. Marcus savors that mingled smell of faint smoke and upcoming warmth. It awakens his appetite gently. A few others in the neighborhood are up and about now. An older woman emerges from a side door with a large clay jug balanced on her hip, heading for the fountain to fetch water. She nods a silent greeting as she passes. Marcus offers a friendly wave and steps aside respectfully on the narrow sidewalk to give her room. A little farther on, he notices a tabby cat curled up on a high windowsill, the creature's fur ruffled from sleep. It blinks slowly in the dawn light and then closes its eyes again, utterly unbothered by the waking world. Life in the city is beginning to stir, but softly, one creature at a time. At the corner, Marcus comes upon the small public fountain, a simple stone basin fed by a spur from the aqueduct. The water pours in a steady trickle from a spout carved like a lion's head. A few pigeons gather at the basin's edge, bobbing to sip the fresh water. When Marcus' quiet steps approach, one pigeon flutters its wings and ascends to a perch on a nearby roof, but the others merely eye him and continue their morning drink. Marcus takes in the scene, the clear water flowing, the muted coo of the pigeons, the pearly light now spreading in the east. He reaches down and cups his hand to gather a bit of the cool water, splashing it onto the back of his neck. It feels wonderfully brisk. He smooths his hair and stands upright again, feeling the subtle warmth of the first sun on his face. The sun's edge has just crested the low eastern buildings, sending slender rays down the lane. Overnight, gray turns to living color around him. The stucco walls across the way glow honey gold in that newborn sunlight, and the damp cobblestones take on a gentle steam that catches the light. The quiet is gradually filled with the faint sounds of morning. From a distant yard comes the crow of a rooster, cracking the stillness. Marcus smiles even here in the city. One can hear a farmyard cockerel now and then, harbinger of the dawn. Somewhere, a wooden door creaks open. A voice, perhaps a mother calling to a child, echoes very softly from an alley, then hushes. The city is waking. Marcus turns back toward home, walking slowly to savor these last moments of early morning grace. As he rounds a corner, he nearly bumps into an old man leading a sleepy donkey laden with baskets of vegetables. The old man offers Marcus a cordial nod, which Marcus returns with a warm salve, amets. Marcus inquires softly about the morning's fare. The vegetable seller grins and pats his dozing donkey, remarking that the clear dawn promises a fine market day. They share a friendly chuckle as the donkey snorts, and then part with a wave, each continuing on his way, the old man toward the markets, Marcus toward home. By the time Marcus arrives back at his own door, the sun's first rays are reaching it, illuminating the faded red paint of the doorframe and the tidy bronze wind chime hung beside it. He slips quietly into the house. The atrium is now painted with dawn light. One wall glows softly where the sunlight slants in through the compluvium, and the little pool in the center reflects a patch of sky now brightening from pink to a pale morning blue. From the kitchen alcove beyond the atrium comes the gentle crackle of a fire being coaxed back to life. The comforting aroma of toasting bread wafts out. Marcus peeks in to see Tiro, their young household servant, Already up and tending the small hearth, the boy feeds a few more sticks to the flames and blows on them until they dance brightly under the cooking pot. The sight and smell remind Marcus of his appetite. He realizes he is quite hungry now. He pads to the table in a corner of the atrium where they often take their first meal. There, on a terracotta platter, Livia has thoughtfully set out a simple breakfast. Yesterday's bread cut into slices, a small dish of olive oil, and a handful of dark olives from their own little jar. A clay cup of watered wine stands ready, covered by a cloth to keep dust and curious household mice away. The sight makes Marcus chuckle quietly, even half asleep. Livia did not forget to arrange his breakfast. He sits on a low stool and pulls the platter closer. Taking a slice of the coarse bread, Marcus dips it into the olive oil, then sprinkles a tiny pinch of salt on it, the way Livia advises for flavor. He chews slowly. The bread is a bit dry from yesterday, but the fruity richness of the oil and the salt make it pleasant on the tongue. He follows it with a sip of the diluted wine, which is cool and mild. Bit by bit, he enjoys the rest of the bread and a few wrinkled black olives. The briny burst of the olives wakes him fully. As he eats, Marcus gazes into the little garden beyond the atrium. Through the colonnade, he can see the household's modest peristyle garden, just a few potted herbs, a young fig tree, and trailing ivy now coming alive with light. A pair of sparrows flutters down to the flagstones in search of crumbs. Marcus savors these quiet moments. The soft crunch of bread, the sweet hint of watered wine, the birds greeting the day just as he has. There is no rush this morning. Soon enough, movement by the atrium entrance heralds Livia's arrival. She steps out from the shadows of the hall, tying the sash of her light peplos dress, her hair neatly gathered up but a few dark locks still tumbling free about her face. She looks a bit drowsy, but when she sees Marcus, her whole face brightens with a gentle smile. "Good morning," she says, her voice a tender murmur so as not to break the peace of the hour. "Good morning," Marcus replies warmly. He rises and pours another cup of watered wine, offering it to her. Livia takes it gratefully and seats herself on the bench beside him. They share the remaining olives and a few bites of bread. Livia drizzles a little honey from a tiny jar onto her piece of bread, a treat for herself, and encourages Marcus to do the same. The honey is from their own bees, kept in hives on the roof. Its floral sweetness transforms the plain bread into a small delight. They exchange quiet words about their plans for the day. Marcus mentions that he will walk to the forum shortly to see if any news has been posted or if any acquaintances are about. Livia nods. She knows his habit of a morning stroll and approves. She tells him she will spend the morning tending to her weaving. The household loom stands in a corner awaiting her skilled hands. Perhaps, she adds, she'll visit their neighbor Octavia later to exchange some fresh herbs. They're mint for Octavia's rosemary. Marcus smiles, picturing the two women amicably gossiping over the garden wall. Their breakfast together is simple and brief, but comforting. When they have finished, Livia carries the emptied cup and platter back to the kitchen, where Tiro is now grinding barley for the noon porridge. Marcus, meanwhile, fetches his light outdoor cloak and his walking stick. Not that he needs it for support, but it's useful to gently shoo errant dogs or goats from his path in the busier streets. Before heading out again, Marcus returns to the lararium with Livia by his side. Together they light a fresh pinch of incense. On the little altar the smoke swirls upward, and they each silently mouth a tiny prayer for the day's fortune. Livia bows her head and whispers a reverent Salva nos hodie. Keep us safe today. Marcus gives her hand a soft squeeze. These small rituals frame their day and give it auspicious start. With the morning sun now filtering bright and gold through the doorway, Marcus steps out into the street once more, this time with purpose, while Livia and Tiro remain to begin their chores. She waves from the threshold, reminding him with playful sternness to be back by midday meal. He chuckles and nods, promising with a grin not to be late or let some forum debate kidnap him. Setting off toward the heart of the city, Marcus maintains an easy pace. The streets of the neighborhood are fully awake by now. Shopkeepers open the wooden shutters of their storefronts one by one. From a tiny bakery nook, the yeasty fragrance of freshly baked flatbreads drifts out, and Marcus notes a small queue of early risers already waiting their turn for a hot loaf. The baker's apprentice, dusted head to toe in flour, emerges to chalk today's prices on a board, the chalk scraping softly and unintelligibly from this distance. As Marcus turns onto a main street, the volume of activity increases. Children trot along carrying small bundles of kindling or pitchers of water errands for their mothers. A fruit seller pushes a two-wheeled cart laden with late summer figs and early autumn pomegranates, calling out his wares in a musical voice. A pair of young women, perhaps sisters, walk arm in arm, balancing between them a basket of laundry headed for the public washhouse. They chatter and laugh softly, the sounds of their giggles blending with the clop of a passing mule's hooves on stone. Yet even with more people about, the atmosphere remains gentle. The sun, still low, bathes everything in a honeyed glow. Marcus makes his way smoothly through the growing bustle, exchanging polite nods here and there. He passes a small shrine embedded at a street corner, a humble clay statue of Mercury with a faded garland from yesterday hung around it. A few citizens pause briefly to touch the altar or leave a posy of wildflowers. Marcus also slows, touching his fingers to his forehead in a sign of respect as he walks by. Salve Mercurius, he whispers in a casual prayer for the god of travelers to favor his steps today. The street he follows soon joins a wider avenue that slopes gently downward toward the Roman Forum, the beating heart of the city's public life. As Marcus proceeds, the buildings on either side gradually transition from modest shops and apartments to more impressive structures of state and commerce. The morning light grows clearer, and the sky above is a serene, pale blue. Cresting a small rise, Marcus suddenly gains a splendid view. Spread out before him lies the Forum Romanum, bathed in the early sun. Marble columns and temple pediments shine white and pink in the light, and the spaces between them are animated with the movement of people gathering for the day's business. Marcus pauses a moment at this familiar yet always breathtaking sight. There, at the far end, the venerable Temple of Saturn with its tall columns presides, and to one side the curved bulk of the Senate House stands sober and solid. The statue-crowned Arch of Severus casts a long shadow across the flagstones. Although Marcus has seen this view countless times, it never fails to stir a little flutter of reverence in him. To walk into the Forum in the morning is to step into the living history of the empire. He descends the steps onto the Via Sacra, the sacred road that traverses the Forum's length. The open plaza is already moderately busy, though not crowded. The scent of morning offerings, fragrant wood smoke, and crushed bay leaves lingers in pockets of the cool air, evidence of early temple rites now concluded. The usual background hum of the Forum is beginning. Orators clearing their throats and warming up for speeches, clerks opening the doors of the basilicas, the ring of a hammer as some shop sets up a stall, and the general murmur of Roman citizens greeting each other in the dawn of commerce. Marcus moves with unhurried steps along the ancient paving stones. To his left, the temple of Antoninus and Faustina rises on a high podium, its massive Corinthian columns streaked with age. Its heavy bronze doors are still closed at this hour. The priesthood will open them later for worshippers. A temple attendant sweeps the top step, his broom making soft swishing noises. Marcus catches the attendant's eye and offers a courteous nod. The man returns it, pausing in his sweeping to allow Marcus to pass. To his right, the little round temple of Vesta peeks out from behind its sacred enclosure, the eternal flame of the city tended inside by the Vestal Virgins. Though one cannot see the flame from here, a thin wisp of smoke curls from the vent at the top of the tiled roof, a comforting sign that the hearth of Rome still burns, as always. Not far off, two of the Vestal virgins themselves, robed in pure white, glide silently along a portico, likely on their way back to the house of the Vestals after completing the morning's first rituals. People respectfully make way for them. Marcus, too, stands aside under an arch for a moment as they pass, inclining his head. The Vestals' faces are serene and distant. They walk with eyes lowered as if still half in prayer. In their hands they carry small garlands of fresh flowers, perhaps offerings they just received from some grateful supplicant. The soft fragrance of lilies and violets trails in their wake. The sight of these women, symbols of the city's chastity and continuity, fills Marcus with a gentle sense of awe. It is another reminder of the many layers of devotion and duty quietly at work in Rome at any hour. Marcus continues deeper into the Forum. He decides first to check the Acta Diurna, the public daily postings, which are displayed on a board near the Senate House. A small knot of citizens stands there already, scanning the freshly painted notices for items of interest. As Marcus approaches, he hears them muttering about some decree regarding grain shipments and a note of an upcoming minor festival for a particular deity. He waits politely for a space to open, then steps closer to read for himself. The board lists in neat script announcements such as the schedule of the next games in the amphitheater, a summary of a Senate decision on provincial taxes, and news of a victory by a Roman legion on a far-off frontier. Marcus finds mild interest in a brief line mentioning that a new batch of Egyptian marble has arrived at the port. It means the renovation of the Temple of Apollo will likely resume soon. But beyond that, nothing urgent catches his eye. While he is reading, a familiar voice greets him from behind. "Salve, Marcus! I thought that was you." Marcus turns with pleasant surprise to see Titus, an old friend from his army days, approaching with a cheerful grin. Titus is a stocky fellow in his mid-30s like Marcus, with a neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard and an easy manner. He carries a leather ledger under one arm, likely coming from an early client meeting or headed to one. "Salve, Titus," Marcus replies, clasping the man's forearm in greeting. "What brings you out so early? Business already?" Titus chuckles. "I had a small matter to file at the Basilica Aemilia first thing. Thought I'd reward myself with a stroll and maybe catch a sight of an old friend." He winks. Marcus smiles. "Reward indeed, here I am." They fall into step together, walking slowly along the edge of the Forum's open square. A few other pairs and trios of morning strollers dot the expanse, but there is ample room and relative quiet still. They decide to walk under the colonnade of the Basilica Julia for some shade as the sun continues to climb. As they stroll, they exchange the latest news of their families. Titus mentions that his wife's sister just had a baby, and there will be a small celebration this evening. He extends an invitation for Marcus and Livia to join if they're free. Marcus thanks him, but gently declines, knowing Livia has other plans. Still, he is touched to be included. He then asks Titus how his work as a scribe for the magistrates is faring. Titus rolls his eyes good-naturedly and shares a humorous anecdote. Apparently, a miswritten sign at the grain market yesterday caused brief panic as people thought bread prices had doubled overnight. Titus recounts how a hastily painted extra numeral led dozens of customers to accuse a bewildered baker of extortion until the error was discovered. As he tells the tale, Titus cannot resist imitating the flustered baker, throwing up his hands and sputtering in defense. Marcus covers his mouth to stifle a laugh, mindful of the basilica's tendency to echo. The two men's restrained chuckles bounce off the marble columns. In the vast quiet of the morning forum, their private little mirth quickly dissipates into the air, harming no one. They continue to wander, conversation turning to simpler things. The fine weather of late, and hopes that this year's grape harvest will be especially sweet. Titus mentions he's heard the vineyards outside the city had just the right amount of rain. Marcus remarks he is looking forward to the new wine that will be ready by winter. Both men being fond of a good cup, They exchange recommendations of local wine cellars like connoisseurs, trading secrets, though in truth they are praising fairly ordinary tavern fare. Still, it's a pleasant and utterly Roman pastime to discuss wine and weather under the porticos, and it feels as comfortable as a well-worn toga. By now the sun is fully up, gilding the high points of the temples and casting short shadows at their feet. The forum is growing lively. A small crowd gathers near the rostra, the speaker's platform, where an energetic orator has begun a speech on some civic issue. His voice rises in fervor, though from this distance his words are indistinct. Here and there, shopkeepers in the tabernae under the basilica's arches arrange their merchandise. Marcus spies rolls of papyrus and inkpots in one, bolts of cloth in another, fruits and soft cheeses in a third. Laborers carry crates and sacks through the periphery of the square, getting an early start before the sun becomes too hot. Marcus and Titus meander toward the western end of the forum, where the Temple of Saturn stands. The 8 majestic columns of Saturn's porch cast slanted stripes of shade and sun on the marble pavement. At the foot of the steps, a few older citizens sit on a bench, discussing something in low tones while feeding crumbs to the sparrows hopping about. The temple's bronze doors are open now. Inside, Marcus can see the warm glow of many oil lamps on the altar and smell the lingering incense of the morning sacrifice to Saturn. 2 junior priests exit carrying a covered censer between them, the rich frankincense smoke trailing behind in a thin line. Marcus feels a tug of devotion and suggests to Titus that they offer a quick word of thanks at Saturn's outdoor altar. He is, after all, the god of wealth and plenty, and it never hurts to stay in Saturn's good graces. Titus readily agrees. They approach the public altar at the temple's front, where some fragrant cedar boughs still crackle on the coals from the morning's offerings. Marcus fishes out a small coin from his tunic pouch, and with a silent prayer for continued prosperity and peace, drops it gently into the offering box. Titus does the same. The two share a brief moment of reflective silence amid the thin whirls of incense smoke and the quiet presence of the looming temple columns above. At length, Titus glances at the position of the sun and the shadows it casts. It is nearly mid-morning. Duties call. I should be off to the office, he says regretfully. We have a full docket today. Marcus understands. He too should probably begin making his way home before the noon heat. They walk together as far as the edge of the forum, chatting idly about possibly meeting at the baths later in the afternoon, if time permits. Titus has a gap between his tasks, and Marcus readily agrees a nice long soak before dinner would suit him perfectly. They agree on the baths of Titus in the late afternoon and part with a hearty clasp of arms. Marcus and Titus separate with a final wave. Before leaving the forum himself, Marcus pauses at the edge of the deserted square. The business of the morning has given way to an unusual lull as midday approaches. Many who had errands here are already drifting away to seek their noontime rest. The great Capitoline Hill rises to the west, its lofty temple of Jupiter now gleaming under the high sun. Beyond it, he catches a silver glimmer of the distant Tiber as it winds through the city. Even in this moment of stillness, the grand presence of Rome is everywhere around him. Satisfied and grateful for the events of the morning, Marcus turns his steps toward home. He decides to take a slight detour on his way back, drawn by the allure of the Tiber's broad shimmer not far off. Veering down a side street, he strolls toward the riverbank where a row of old plane trees lines the promenade. The sun's heat is growing, but under those generous branches, dappled shade falls in moving patterns. Marcus finds a quiet spot along the quay and pauses, resting both hands atop his walking stick as he takes in the view. The river flows with an unhurried grace, wide and green-tinged. Flashes of sunlight dance on its surface like so many scattered coins. A wooden barge loaded with timber drifts lazily downstream. The lone boatman on board has set aside his pole to let the current do the work. He leans against a stack of logs, and Marcus can just make out the man softly humming a tune, a gentle melody that mingles with the lap of water against the barge's hull. The sound is so soft and distant that it might be the river itself singing its eternal song. Nearby, a fisherman in a broad straw hat sits in his small skiff close to the bank, patiently mending a fishing net. Each deft movement of his hands is slow, almost drowsy in the midday warmth. On the grassy bank beside him, his scruffy brown dog wades knee-deep into the water, snapping playfully at its own reflection, or perhaps a darting minnow. The fisherman chuckles and says something affectionate to the animal, then continues threading his net. The scene is like a living tableau of tranquility. Marcus inhales the moist, earthy scent rising from the river, a mix of mud, water plants, and sun-warmed stone. A light breeze ruffles his hair and brings relief from the gathering heat. It also carries faint sounds from further down the bank, the distant laughter of a few children splashing their feet in the shallows and the echo of a woman's voice calling them back to shade. On the opposite bank, a white heron stands among the reeds, perfectly still, waiting for a catch. Marcus watches as the elegant bird suddenly strikes, its beak plunging into the water, and comes up with a small fish, glistening silver. The heron tosses its head and gulps down its meal, then resumes its statue-like vigil. For a few minutes, Marcus allows himself to simply be present by the Tiber, feeling the breeze on his face, listening to the rhythmic swish of the water against the stone embankment, and enjoying the rare peace of a midday in no hurry. Here the city sounds are softened to near silence. Even the distant clop of hooves on a bridge sounds languid and musical. The river has a way of absorbing the city's harshness and leaving only gentleness. Eventually, Marcus knows he should head home. Livia will have the midday meal waiting, and he doesn't wish to worry her by being late. With a last appreciative glance at the glimmering water and the dozing fisherman and his happy dog, Marcus turns away from the quay. He walks back through the sun-dappled lane, feeling remarkably refreshed by this brief communion with the river. It is as though he has bottled a bit of that tranquility inside him to carry home. As Marcus nears his own neighborhood again, the streets are nearly empty. It is midday, and all sensible folk have sought the cool refuge of their homes. Indeed, by the time he arrives at his door, the city has entered its customary midday lull. The sun stands high and brilliant, making the streets white with glare, and the shadows beneath the eaves stark and short. The very air seems to doze. The clamor and bustle of the morning have hushed. In the distance, Marcus hears one lone cartwheel grinding and a vendor's voice calling a final sale, but soon even those sounds fade. The pause of Meridiatio, the midday siesta, has settled over Rome. It is so general that the streets are as deserted as at midnight. One Roman writer once joked that this silent hour was the perfect time for a ghost story, and Marcus smiles as he recalls that thought. Indeed, with the hush so profound, he could almost imagine a gentle spirit wandering the forum colonnades without anyone noticing. The courtyard of Marcus' own home is drowsy and quiet. The sunlight falls in hot shafts through the rectangular opening in the roof, illuminating motes of dust that float lazily in the atrium. Not even a lizard stirs in the crevices of the garden wall. The household cat is doubtless curled up asleep in some cool nook. As he steps inside, Marcus hears the faint clink of pottery and the soft whoosh of the kitchen fire, comforting signs that Livia and Tiro are home and busy. Setting aside his walking stick, Marcus quietly makes his way to the dining area where the midday meal is laid out. On a low table under the portico, Livia has arranged a simple prandium, lunch. There is a bowl of yesterday's lentil soup, now cooled, some sliced cucumbers and figs on a platter, a bit of cold chicken left from a previous dinner, and of course, bread and olive oil. The meal will be light. Neither of them eats too much at noon, especially in this heat. Livia herself is seated on a cushion, waiting for him with a smile that is both mildly reproachful and loving. "You took your time, dear," she teases softly as Marcus comes and sits beside her. "I may have tarried by the river," he admits with an apologetic tilt of his head. He helps himself to a ladle of the cool lentil soup and tears off a bit of bread to dip in it. "I hope I haven't kept you waiting long." "Not too long," Livia replies, pouring fresh water into his cup from an earthen jug. "Tiro and I had a little bite already." She gestures, and Marcus notices that Tiro is not around. Likely the boy has eaten and is now resting in the shade somewhere, as is his wont at midday. They eat quietly, side by side. The lentil soup is refreshing with a splash of vinegar in it, and the cucumbers are crisp and hydrating. Marcus sighs appreciatively. The house is so still that he can hear that sigh echo faintly off the atrium walls, a contented sound in a contented space. Livia inquires after his morning, and he shares a few snippets between bites how beautiful the Forum looked, and running into Titus, and the amusing grain market story. Livia's eyes crinkle with amusement at the miswritten sign anecdote. She, in turn, tells him that Octavia stopped by briefly to drop off a bundle of rosemary and sage. The kitchen now smells wonderfully of those herbs. They chuckle over a bit of neighborhood gossip. Apparently, the cobbler's wife down the street is expecting another baby, their fifth, Livia whispers with exaggerated astonishment. The streets outside are silent. Even the usual barking of stray dogs has ceased for now. As they finish their light meal, Marcus popping the last sweet fig into his mouth, a languor falls over them. The combination of walking in the sun and now a full stomach makes Marcus's eyelids heavy. Livia sees him stifle a yawn and smiles. "Go," she says, "lie down and rest. There is still a good hour before we must resume anything." "What about you?" Marcus asks, reaching to stack the emptied cup and bowl, to take back to the kitchen. "I will also close my eyes a bit," she assures, "after I tidy this." They clean the table together quietly. Marcus insists on helping, despite Livia's gentle scolding that he should start his nap. Soon enough, the dishes are left soaking, and the household grows utterly still. The midday heat has intensified. Even with the shutters partially drawn, one can feel the haze of it in the air. From the street comes no sound at all. It is as if the whole world has paused. In their dim bedchamber, the couple prepares to rest. The room is cool and shaded, the walls thick enough to keep out much of the sun's glare. Livia loosens her braided hair and lies down on their simple bed, stretching out with a soft sigh. Marcus places a light kiss on her forehead, then settles down beside her. For a moment, they lie there in a companionable silence, listening to each other's breathing and the faint buzzing of a lone fly somewhere in the rafters. The quiet of midday is absolute. Marcus even recalls with a sleepy smile that one writer claimed this was the ideal hour for a ghost story, so complete was the hush. Indeed, as he closes his eyes, he imagines the entire city in slumber, every sound muted and soft. As his mind drifts, Marcus finds himself floating on the edge of dreams. Images flit through the darkness behind his eyelids. He imagines himself a young boy again, dozing on a warm afternoon beneath the olive trees of his father's little farm outside the city. In this half-dream, he can hear the distant laughter of his siblings playing in the fields and the gentle hum of his mother's voice as she sings a lullaby while weaving. The golden sunlight of memory flickers, and he smells dry grass and wildflowers. A honeybee buzzes lazily past in his imagination, and he feels the same safe, drowsy contentment he felt in childhood. That cherished feeling wraps around him now like a light blanket. Marcus slips fully into sleep, carrying the present peace and the warmth of his reminiscence with him. Outside, the streets of Rome remain in their enchanted midday slumber. Not a cart rolls, not a voice calls. In the courtyards and gardens, even the birds are quiet, perching in the deepest shade with beaks open to release heat. It is a brief, necessary stillness in the midst of the city's usually ceaseless activity. One could almost believe in this hour that time has nodded off along with everyone else. After about an hour, Marcus awakens naturally to the faint stirring of a breeze through the window shutters. He blinks, adjusting to the low light inside the cubiculum. Livia is still beside him, eyes closed, breathing in a slow, gentle rhythm. She looks serene, one hand tucked under her cheek. Marcus is careful not to wake her as he rises from the bed. He feels pleasantly refreshed. That short sleep has chased away the slight fatigue of the early morning. Outside, the quality of the light has changed subtly. It's a touch more golden, indicating that afternoon is moving in. The oppressive white glare of noon has softened just a little. Marcus steps out into the atrium. The shadow from the atrium's central opening has shifted notably. The sun is now angling toward the west. The household cat has emerged from wherever it hid at midday and now lies luxuriously stretched along a sunbeam near the garden door, grooming itself. It pauses to regard Marcus with a slow blink before resuming the intricate washing of its paw. The sights and sounds of very early afternoon begin filtering back. He hears a distant wheel creaking, deliveries resuming, and somewhere a door slamming as a merchant reopens his shop. Rome is yawning back to life. Livia soon appears in the atrium as well, tying a ribbon around her hair, which she has rebraided swiftly. She looks rosy from the short rest. They share a few words. She asks if he is still planning to go to the baths, and he nods, inviting her to come along if she pleases. Livia demurs with a smile. The public women's baths are on a different schedule, and she would prefer to spend the late afternoon finishing a bit of weaving. Go, enjoy, she tells him, knowing how Marcus loves his bathing routine with his friends. Ilse to dinner. Marcus decides to head out before the day grows much older. The best time to bathe is typically mid to late afternoon, when the day's work is done, but before the evening meal. He gathers a small bundle of bathing supplies, a strip of soft linen towel, a flask of lightly scented oil. Livia has mixed it with a touch of rosemary and lavender, and his bronze strigil, the curved tool for scraping off oil and sweat. Placing these in a simple canvas shoulder bag, he bids goodbye to Livia for the next couple of hours. Don't fall asleep at the baths and miss dinner, she teases lightly as he goes. He promises he won't, and blows her a playful kiss from the doorway. The sun has lost its earlier bite by the time Marcus makes his way across the city toward the Baths of Titus on the Esquiline Hill. The walk is not far. The bath complex lies conveniently close to the forum area, just east of the great amphitheater. As he approaches, the magnificent bulk of the Colosseum, the Flavian Amphitheater, rises into view, its arches stark against the blue sky. In the declining afternoon light, the Colosseum stone has taken on a honey gold hue. Though many citizens bustle around its perimeter, vendors hawking snacks to laborers finishing their day, or youths playing ball in its shadow, the amphitheater itself is quiet and empty of crowds, since no games are scheduled today. Marcus gazes up at its towering outer wall, marveling at the engineering that could create such an enormous structure. High above, under the awnings, a few pigeons flutter. Otherwise, the Colosseum sleeps a slumbering giant that will awaken only when tens of thousands pour into its seats for the next festival of games. Just past the amphitheater, built against the slope of the ice hill, sprawls the Baths of Titus. Though not as immense as some of the newer imperial baths, they are grand in their own right, a complex of brick and marble halls, porticos, and courtyards encircling the bath chambers themselves. A broad set of steps leads up to the entrance, flanked by columns. The baths are open to all free citizens, and by this hour a steady stream of people comes and goes. Groups of friends, solitary bathers, slaves carrying their masters' towels and strigils, and plenty of relaxed faces. Marcus climbs the steps and passes through the vestibule, where a bath attendant, a wiry old man, sits by a small table to collect the modest entrance fee of a quadrans, the smallest coin. Marcus fishes a quadrans from his coin pouch and drops it into the brass dish. The old man nods in thanks and waves him through. Immediately upon entering, Marcus is greeted by the bath's warm, humid atmosphere and a symphony of soft echoes. He steps into the palaestra, an open courtyard within the complex designated for exercise. It's a rectangular space under the open sky, ringed by colonnades. The afternoon sun slants in from the west, leaving half the yard in inviting shade. Several patrons are here, engaging in light workouts before bathing, a common practice to work up a sweat. Marcus scans the palaestra and soon spots his friend Titus, true to their arrangement, already there. Titus is standing under the shade of the colonnade, mid-conversation with another acquaintance as they bounce a ball back and forth. Hez stripped down to a simple loincloth, his body gleaming slightly with perspiration from exercise. Catching sight of Marcus, Titus raises a hand in greeting and gestures for him to join. Marcus grins and makes his way over. He quickly slips off his cloak and outer tunic, leaving only his knee-length sublegaculum tied at his waist. This garment will suffice for modesty during exercise and initial bathing steps. He secures his belongings with a waiting attendant boy, handing over his bag of oil and towel to be kept in the apoditerium, changing room for now. Clapping a friendly hand on Marcus' shoulder, Titus immediately suggests a brief round of Trigana ball game favored in the baths as a warm-up. Another bather, a wiry young man, joins them to make a trio. They stand in a triangle and begin to toss a small leather ball back and forth in quick succession. The game is half coordination, half friendly competition, as each tries to catch the others off guard with swift, unexpected passes. Laughter and light-hearted taunts punctuate their play. The ball sails through the golden-lit air of the palaestra in dizzying arcs. Marcus hasn't played in a while, but soon gets into the rhythm. He snatches the ball mid-flight when Titus zings it toward him, and then feints a throw to the youth, but arcs it back to Titus instead. A satisfying smack of leather against palm echoes as Titus barely catches it, chuckling. They play like this for a good 10 minutes, enjoying the slight sweat it raises and the camaraderie it fosters. Finally, pleasantly winded, the three call the game and toss the ball to a waiting attendant. Breathing a bit hard but loose-limbed and smiling, Marcus thanks the others for the match. They all decide it's time to hit the baths proper. Marcus fetches his bag from the storage shelf and then files with Titus through a large arched doorway leading into the bath chambers. They first enter the apoditerium, the main changing room. It's a high-ceilinged hall with stone benches and rows of cubbyholes carved into the walls. The air here is already warm and carries the scent of clean steam and fragrant oils. Several other men are present in various stages of undress, stowing their tunics and sandals in the niches. Marcus and Titus find an empty spot. Marcus places his folded clothes and sandals into an alcove and, as is customary, hands a small tip to a bath attendant to keep an eye on their belongings. He keeps only his loincloth on for now. From here, they pass through into the tepidarium, the warm room that bridges the transition between the outer world and the hot bath. The tepidarium's door opens, and a soft wave of heated air caresses Marcus' face. Inside, the room is dim and tranquil. Its marble walls and floor are gently warm to the touch, warmed by the hypocaust, the underfloor heating system. Semi-reclined on stone benches along the walls, a few bathers are already relaxing, their bodies glistening with a mild sheen of perspiration from the ambient warmth. The visuals are a feast for the eyes. The gleam of polished marble, the reflection of lamplight shimmering on damp stone walls, and the diffusion of sunlight that filters through high alabaster-paned windows. Marcus notices that beneath the limpid water of a decorative basin, the floor is inlaid with a mosaic of cerulean tiles depicting dolphins chasing one another's tails. The playful forms ripple and distort in the moving water, giving an illusion of living dolphins darting about. The striking beauty of the mosaic and its gentle blues is soothing an early hint at the sensory delights to come. Titus and Marcus choose a bench and sit for a few minutes, acclimating to the tepid heat. They engage in low, murmured conversation with another acquaintance who is resting there, exchanging courteous greetings and comments about how quiet the baths are today. They aren't too crowded, likely because it's a regular workday. All the while, Marcus feels his pores opening and his muscles relaxing from the gentle warmth permeating the air. A faint scent of herbs lavender perhaps wafts by occasionally, likely from oils used by another bather or from a nearby sauna room. He leans back against the smooth wall and sighs contentedly, allowing the warmth to penetrate. After sufficiently warming their bodies in the tepidarium, the two friends catch each other's eyes with a nod, the silent agreement that it's time for the main event, the hot baths. They rise and move toward another door, this one leading to the caldarium, or hot room. A slave attendant pushes the heavy door open for them, and they are met with a gust of steamy, sultry air and the distinctive sound of water, the soft splash and ripple that echoes invitingly. The caldarium is a grand hall filled with steam, its far walls hazy and lanterns glowing like orbs through the mist. Along one end of the hall stretches a large hot water pool. Pillars support a high vaulted ceiling from which hang bronze lamps shaped like ships, their flames burning bravely in the humid air. The daylight entering through round oculus openings above mixes with the lamplight to create a softly diffused radiance. Marcus and Titus step down into the caldarium's pool via wide marble steps. The initial touch of the water against Marcus's skin is bracingly hot. He draws a quick breath through his teeth, but he knows to proceed steadily. Within moments, as he wades in waist-deep and then chest-deep, the intense heat becomes not only bearable, but wonderfully soothing. His skin flushes pink, and he can feel the heat sinking deep into his limbs, unknotting any leftover tensions. They find a submerged ledge to sit on along the pool's edge, sighing in unison as the hot water works its magic. Titus closes his eyes and tilts his head back, letting the steam envelop him. Marcus sinks lower until the water nearly covers his shoulders. His heart beats a bit faster from the warmth, but it feels cleansing. All around, other bathers murmur contentedly or lean against the pool sides in silent bliss. Now and then, someone pours a bucket of cool water over his head before resubmerging, sending up brief billows of steam. Somewhere in the caldarium, Marcus hears a faint melody, a lyre being plucked in an adjoining chamber, or perhaps a bather softly singing an old tune. The sound mingles with the gentle drip of condensate from the ceiling and the lapping of water as people move. It creates an atmosphere almost like a sanctuary of calm. After a good soak, Marcus and Titus exchange a knowing glance, time for the next phase. The oil and scrape. They exit the pool, skin glowing red from the heat, and move to a bench in a corner where the temperature is a bit milder. An attendant stands ready with their personal flasks of oil, which they handed over earlier. Marcus takes his flask of fragrant oil. It's a golden liquid infused with rosemary and lavender, thanks to Livia's preparation. He pours a generous amount into his palm and begins to smooth it over his arms, chest, and shoulders. The oil, combined with his damp skin, glistens and releases the soothing scent of herbs into the steam. Titus, beside him, uses his own pine-scented oil, rubbing it into his tired legs and feet with a groan of pleasure. The slave attendant then steps in to assist, as is often the custom. With efficient, practiced motions, the young attendant uses a small metal strigil to gently scrape the oil, sweat, and dirt from Marcus' back, shoulders, and limbs. Marcus has always found this sensation oddly pleasant. The strigil's curved edge is dull, so it doesn't cut. It simply glides along the skin, lifting away all impurities. He closes his eyes as the attendant works, feeling truly cleansed. Each scrape produces a little ribbon of emulsified oil and grime, which the attendant rinses off with a splash of hot water from a nearby basin. Marcus himself uses his own strigil on areas he can reach, running it firmly along his forearms, his thighs, his calves. The repetitive action is meditative. All around, other patrons are doing the same or having slaves do it for them, resulting in a quiet chorus of metal against skin, a rhythmic, gentle scraping that, to Marcus, signifies the last vestiges of stress being drawn away from his body. When they are completely oiled and scraped and rinsed clean with a few dippers of warm water, Marcus and Titus stand for a moment, letting the air cool them just slightly. They look at each other and share a chuckle. Both men's faces are flushed and gleaming, their hair damp and curling with humidity. They've shed the toxins of the day and the dust of the forum with that sweat and oil, and their bodies feel marvelously light and renewed. Now comes the final invigorating plunge. They walk from the caldarium into a small connecting chamber and then into the frigidarium, the cold room. Instantly, the temperature drops. The frigidarium is a circular chamber with a round cold pool in the center. Its walls are pale blue, and a single circular oculus in the dome ceiling allows natural light to beam down, illuminating the still, mirror-like surface of the cold water. The change from the caldarium's mist to the frigidarium's clarity is striking the air. Here is cool and carries the scent of minerals. Marcus and Titus waste no time. Together they descend into the frigidarium's pool. The cold water bites at Marcus's overheated skin. He gasps aloud despite himself at the first shock. Across from him, Titus lets out a roaring "Ha!" through chattering teeth as he pushes himself to submerge to his shoulders. The initial shock gives way to a tingling numbness that is oddly refreshing. Marcus takes a deep breath and sinks in up to his neck. The cold envelops him, and every pore and blood vessel seems to sing at the sudden change. He feels wide awake and brilliantly alive. At one side of the pool stands a graceful marble nymph statue, tilted urn in hand. Ice-cold water pours from the urn's mouth, feeding the pool continuously. The oculus above casts a beam of light that catches on the cascading water droplets, making them sparkle. The entire frigidarium has a serene, otherworldly aspect, as if one has stepped into an underwater grotto touched by moonlight. In the cold, Marcus's skin prickles with goosebumps, but he knows the hot-cold contrast is immensely beneficial, and even a little exhilarating. After a minute or two of brave immersion, both men decide they have been cooled and braced enough. With a final dunk, Marcus fully submerges himself briefly. Feeling the cold water rush over his head, they emerge from the pool, hearts pounding a bit and skins tingling fiercely. An attendant meets them with coarse linen towels. They take their time vigorously rubbing themselves down, restoring warmth through friction. Marcus' skin glows pink and feels as new as a child's, scrubbed, oiled, and chilled into tightness, then warmed again by the towel. They return to the apoditerium to dress. Marcus dons a fresh tunic. He brought one knowing his earlier would be sweaty. The soft, clean cloth against his now smooth skin is a luxurious pleasure of its own. Titus similarly changes into a dry garment. Their hair they simply rake through with their fingers, still damp but quickly drying in the afternoon heat. Feeling gloriously clean and relaxed, the two companions exit into the lounge area of the baths, a broad portico overlooking a small internal garden with couches and chairs where bathers can sit and cool down before departing. There is a stall where a vendor is selling watered wine and small nibbles for those who worked up an appetite. Titus raises an eyebrow in query. Marcus nods agreeably. Why not prolong the leisure a little longer? They purchase 2 cups of cool spiced wine, chilled with snow from the mountains, a decadent little extra the vendor offers. Reclining on a marble bench under the fanned fronds of a potted palm, they sip the sweet beverage. It's infused with honey and a hint of cinnamon, utterly refreshing after the heat and cold of the bath cycle. Around them, a few other bathers lounge in similar fashion, some conversing in low voices, others simply resting with eyes closed. A plump older man on a nearby couch has actually dozed off, snoring softly to the amusement of his friends. In the center of the lounging area, a small fountain plays water trickling from a miniature sculpture of a boy holding a dolphin, then splashing gently into a shallow basin. The sound is melodic and soothing. Titus sighs deeply. "Days like this remind me that life in Rome can be very good," he says quietly, swirling the wine in his cup and watching the light catch it. Marcus tilts his head back, looking at the ceiling where delicate frescoes of twining vines have been painted. He feels utterly at peace. "Truly," he replies, "there's wisdom in enjoying these simple gifts each day." He lifts his cup slightly. Titus smiles and raises his own. They clink together in a small toast. To ordinary days, Titus says, that proved to be extraordinary in their own way. Marcus adds, "To the simple gifts of life." They drink to that, letting the spiced sweetness linger on their tongues. After a spell of pleasant repose, the two men decide it's time to depart. It has been a fine afternoon at the baths, and the sun is now drifting into late day. They retrieve their belongings, the attendants, return Marcus's stick and bag, and Titus tips one with a coin for his help. Exiting the bath complex, they squint momentarily in the bright light of the declining sun. They walk together for a while, falling in with the gentle current of other bathgoers heading home. The city's mood in the late afternoon is convivial, people refreshed from their naps or baths, sharing a few words with neighbors in the streets, preparing mentally for the evening's quiet activities. As they pass once more by the looming Colosseum, Titus mentions he must hurry. He promised his wife he'd pick up some sweets for the family on the way back. At the foot of the amphitheater, a roasted chestnut vendor is tending a small brazier, turning the nuts in a pan and sending up appetizing wisps of nutty smoke. Titus cannot resist. He detours to the vendor. "My wife enjoys these," he explains to Marcus with a grin, purchasing a paper cone brimming with the warm chestnuts. The sweet, smoky aroma wafts around them, evoking memories of winter evenings and festivals. Marcus inhales appreciatively. The vendor sprinkles a bit of salt on the chestnuts and folds the cone neatly before handing it over. Titus tucks the treat into his satchel for later. At a crossroads, the two friends part ways with clasped hands and mutual promises to meet again soon, perhaps for a dinner together next week. Marcus feels a pang of gratitude for long friendships as he watches Titus stride off, whistling lightly, down a lane dappled in the sinking sunlight. Now Marcus makes his own way homeward. The sun is westering, casting a golden glow over Rome's rooftops. The air remains warm, but with a new hint of evening coolness creeping in. As he nears his neighborhood, he passes familiar sights. The fruit vendor from morning now packing up his cart, a pair of stray dogs lazily play-fighting in the dust, a few children kicking a ball in a side alley under the indulgent eye of a grandmother shelling peas. There is a genuine contentment simmering within Marcus as the day draws toward its close. It has been full but not frantic, just as he likes it. From the quiet beauty of the dawn to the friendly chats of morning, a peaceful nap, and the rejuvenation of the baths, it has been a day of small joys strung together like pearls. Before he returns home, Marcus remembers the wine he had intended to bring for dinner. Fortunately, he finds himself walking past his favorite wine shop, a cozy tavern with a weathered sign depicting a cluster of grapes. He steps inside the shop's cool interior, where the scent of fermented grapes and old oak barrels is rich. The shopkeeper, a burly man with purple-stained fingers, recognizes him at once. "Ah, Marcus. Just in time. I've a new white from Setia you might fancy," the man says, reaching for a ceramic jug. Marcus chuckles. "Exactly what I had in mind." The wine seller insists he try a sip, first pouring a mouthful into a clay cup. Marcus tastes the sample. It's sweet and fragrant, with notes of apple and honeysuckle. "Perfect," he nods in appreciation. "Excellent. He'll take a jug of that." With practiced efficiency, The shopkeeper ladles wine from a large amphora into a fired jug, corks it with a bit of wax-stoppered cloth, and ties it securely. Marcus pays him a few coins and thanks him kindly. The shopkeeper winks. Your wife will be pleased it's as sweet as nectar. Marcus departs with the jug cradled carefully in the crook of his arm. The shadows are lengthening now as he walks the last couple of streets toward home. Lamps and torches are being lit one by one along the lanes, adding flickers of orange light to the blue twilight. Neighbors sit on their stoops or lean out of windows chatting with each other now that the heat has ebbed. The city's harsh noises will not resume until tomorrow, for now Rome transitions into an almost village-like calm as families settle in for supper. Marcus arrives at his own door just as a few stars begin to peek out overhead in the darkening sky. The fragrance of savory stew wafts from within. Livia must be at the pot. Smiling, he pushes open the door and steps inside. The atrium is aglow with lamplight. Golden illumination from a trio of oil lamps dances on the frescoed walls, making the painted figures of dancing fauns and nymphs seem to move in the flicker. The air inside is warm and spiced with the scent of the evenings. Cooking, Marcus detects garlic, herbs, and the rich aroma of simmering lentils and meat. It's an instantly comforting welcome. Livia is just emerging from the kitchen area carrying a terracotta dish to set on the dining table. She turns at the sound of the door and her face lights up in a radiant smile. You're just in time, she calls softly, beckoning him in. Marcus closes the door behind him. He takes a moment to absorb the scene, the cozy lamplight, the neatly set dining couches, the enticing meal prepared, and most of all, Livia's loving eyes on him. A wave of tenderness washes over him. This is his favorite moment of any day, coming home to peace and warmth. I may have lingered a bit at the baths, he admits with a playful grin as he crosses the atrium toward her. Livia feigns a little pout, tilting her head. I can tell, she responds, noting his damp hair and the healthy flush in his cheeks. You look as content as a well-fed cat. She leans up and kisses him softly. Marcus, smelling of clean soap and aromatic oils, kisses her back with gratitude. He holds up the jug of Settian wine. A small offering to the household, he says. Ooh, perfect. I'll pour us some with dessert, Livia replies, taking the jug from him. She peeks at the seal and nods in approval at the vintage marked on it. Come, everything's ready. They move to the triclinium, their dining room, where the low table is already arranged with cushions on two sides. Marcus notices Livia has added a little decoration to the table tonight, a few sprigs of fresh mint blossoms in a tiny vase, perfuming the immediate area delicately. They recline on the couches, propping themselves on their left elbows in the customary fashion. On the table, the evening meal is laid out in inviting array. Livia has prepared a modest feast from simple ingredients, a large earthenware bowl of hearty lentil and vegetable stew still steaming, a plate of roasted goat meat drizzled with a tart garum sauce and herbs, a loaf of fresh bread from this morning now reheated to crusty perfection, and small sides of olives, goat cheese, and dressed greens. A pair of ceramic cups stands by, already filled with diluted red wine to accompany the meal. Marcus inhales deeply. It smells wonderful, Livia, he says sincerely. She smiles in thanks and gestures for him to begin. He tears off a piece of bread and uses it to scoop up a mouthful of the lentil stew. The stew has been cooked slowly with carrots, onions, and celery, and seasoned with bay and thyme from their garden. Marcus can't help the contented that escapes as he tastes it. You've outdone yourself, my love, he says. Livia laughs softly. It's just stew you were hungry. True, but it's excellent stew, he insists. They ladle portions onto their plates, stew soaking into slices of bread, roasted meat alongside. As they begin eating in earnest, a comfortable quietude falls. The only sounds are the clink of pottery, the crackle of a small brazier of coals in the corner, kept in case the evening turns cool, and their own satisfied hums of enjoyment. Every now and then, one of them speaks perhaps to complement a particular flavor. Marcus particularly loves the hint of vinegar in the stew, which Livia tells him is a splash of her own homemade cider vinegar. Or to share a thought that drifts in. Livia mentions that Octavia, during her visit, invited them to a little dinner at her house in a few days. Marcus agrees pleasantly a little socializing will be nice. Marcus tells Livia about a snippet of conversation he overheard at the baths, two older fellows debating the merits of Greek versus Roman architecture, which made him chuckle, given neither could hear the other well in the echoing chamber. Livia grins at the image of those stubborn elders. They eat at a gentle pace, savoring each bite. As the main course winds down and their stomachs fill, they both recline a bit more, propped on cushions, sipping the last of the diluted red wine from their cups. Livia touches Marcus' arm and points quietly toward the peristyle garden just visible beyond the dining room. The sky above is now a deep indigo, and through the columns they can see a couple of bright stars twinkling. Night has fully arrived while they dined, bringing with it a tranquil darkness. A single cricket, somewhere in the garden's shrubbery, starts its twilight song. For a while, the earlier narrative says, they both feel the same profound peace. In the lamplight, Marcus' gaze softens as he looks at Livia. For a moment, Marcus' mind drifts back to their wedding day years ago, an evening filled with music, family, and jubilant noise. He remembers Livia on that day, radiant in her ceremonial veil, laughter on her lips as friends and relatives toasted to their future. It was a wonderful celebration, but as he looks at her now, in the intimacy of their lamplit home, he finds he cherishes this quiet companionship even more. The youthful excitement of that wedding day has deepened into a steady, gentle love, a flame that warms every simple moment like this one. He squeezes her hand under the table, grateful beyond words for the life they share. At length, Livia gently moves to clear away the dinner plates, insisting Marcus remain relaxed. He relents after she shoos him lightly with a cloth. In a few efficient trips, she brings the emptied dishes to the kitchen and returns with a surprise hidden under a cloth on a tray. She sets it on the table and unveils their dessert, 2 little honey almond cakes, which she sneaked from the bakery delivery that morning, a bowl of ripe purple figs and green grapes, and a modest wedge of fresh ricotta cheese topped with a drizzle of honey. Marcus's face brightens like a delighted child. "You thought of everything," he exclaims softly. Livia laughs. "You deserve a sweet end to the day." She then uncorks the jug of Settian wine he brought and pours each of them a cup of the rich, sweet white elixir. The fragrance of the wine, like a meadow of wildflowers, fills the air. They begin with the fruit and cheese. The ricotta is creamy and mild. Paired with a bite of fig and a dab of honey, it becomes a little symphony of delicate flavors. Marcus and Livia exchange happy glances. Outside, a balmy night breeze wafts in, causing the flames of the lamps to bob slightly and bringing a welcome coolness. The distant cricket continues its rhythmic chirp. They then turn to the honey almond cakes. Livia cuts them in halves so they can each have more of the soft middle. Marcus takes a bite. The cake is moist and sweet, perfumed with orange zest and cinnamon, Livia added while warming them on the brazier. A small groan of pleasure escapes him. "By Jupiter, that is good," he says, licking a stray bit of honey from his thumb. Livia beams, pleased that he enjoys it. They savor the cake slowly, washing down each buttery sweet mouthful with sips of the cool Settian wine. The wine is like liquid gold, smooth and luscious, with notes of apple and pear that linger on the tongue. When at last they set their cups down, empty, both of them are fully content. Marcus stretches, feeling loose-limbed and pleasantly drowsy from the baths and the hearty meal. Livia, too, leans back with a tranquil sigh, one hand resting on her stomach. "I won't need to eat again for a week," she jokes quietly. The oil lamps on the table are beginning to burn low, their wicks swimming in the last of the oil. A couple of them sputter and need trimming. Livia rises and goes around, snuffing out all but one lamp enough to guide them to bed, letting the corners of the room fall into a cozy darkness. They step out into the atrium for a moment before retiring. The night air in the atrium is deliciously cool on their skin after the warmth of the dining room. Overhead, through the compluvium, an expanse of stars is visible, glittering like an overturned vial of diamonds on a cloth of deep blue. The moon, nearly full, sails high, bathing the atrium's columns and the surface of the little pool in gentle silver light. Marcus draws Livia close as they stand by the atrium's central pool. The water reflects the moon's face, back up at them in shimmering fragments. The couple is quiet, feeling the embrace of the late hour. It is the beautiful liminal moment between the day and the approaching dreams of night. Nights like this make me think of old stories, Livia says softly, resting her head on Marcus' shoulder as they gaze at the moon's reflection in the water. Oh? Marcus turns to her with a gentle smile. He too feels the poetic stillness of the night. Often in the past, he has lulled her to sleep with softly spoken tales or little myths told in low whispers. Her remark tells him she is in the mood for one now. "Would you like to hear one?" he asks quietly, a tender playfulness in his tone. "If you're not too tired," she replies, looking up at him with eyes reflecting the lamplight. In truth, these little bedtime stories of his have become precious to her, a final sweetness before sleep. Marcus shifts, wrapping an arm around her waist comfortably as they stand. "For you, never too tired," he assures. He ponders only a moment before inspiration finds him. "I'll tell you the story of Baucis and Philemon. Do you recall it?" A smile of recognition touches Livia's lips. "The old couple who welcomed the gods?" "Yes, but I'd love to hear it in your words." Marcus nods and begins in a hushed, story-weaver's voice, pitched just for her ears. "Long ago, in a small village in Phrygia," he says, "there lived an elderly couple named Baucis and Philemon. They were poor in possessions, but rich in love and goodness. In a cozy cottage made of straw and wood, they spent their days tending a little garden and caring for each other. Never had two people loved each other more or lived more humbly content. One evening, as the sun was setting and the hearth fire was being lit, two travelers came to their village. No one knew that these travelers were in fact the great god Jupiter and his son Mercury, disguised as weary, poor wayfarers. They had been wandering the countryside, knocking on doors to test the hospitality of the people. But door after door in that village was slammed in their faces. The townsfolk were well off but proud, and they turned the strangers away, offering neither food nor shelter. At last, Jupiter and Mercury, still in disguise, came down the lane to a tiny cottage on the very edge of town, the home of Baucis and Philemon. A warm light glowed through its window. When the old couple saw the two travelers approaching dusty, hunched with weariness, and clearly hungry, their hearts went out to them. Without hesitation, Baucis and Philemon opened their door. "Welcome, friends," Baucis greeted, beckoning them in. Philemon quickly fetched a bench and patted it with their one good blanket to give the travelers a comfortable seat. Though they had very little, the couple immediately set about preparing a meal. Baucis stoked the fire under the hearth pot and put on what meager soup they had, just some garden herbs and a handful of barley, while Philemon ran out to chase down their only goose, intending to roast it for the guests. The goose was clever and eluded Philemon around the yard, and watching the old man pant and stumble after the goose with determined futility, the travelers felt a great tenderness. Jupiter, still in his disguise, gently revealed that there was no need a simple meal would suffice for them. So Baucis and Philemon served their modest fare, a pot of warm goat's milk, a bit of honeycomb, some olives and grapes, and a loaf of brown bread. They apologized repeatedly that they had nothing finer to give. The travelers ate gratefully, and as they ate, something curious happened. Baucis noticed that no matter how many cups of milk she poured, the pitcher remained full. Philemon refilled the wooden wine cup and realized the clay jug of wine never emptied. The old couple exchanged a glance. These were signs that their visitors were no ordinary mortals. At that moment, Jupiter and Mercury cast off their disguise. In a gentle flash, they stood before the couple in divine form. Jupiter, tall and noble with a radiant aura, Mercury, youthful and Quicksilver at his side. Baucis and Philemon were awestruck and fell to their knees. They trembled with fear that they might have offended the gods by offering so little. They begged forgiveness for not having more to give. But Jupiter smiled, and in a voice that rumbled kindly like distant thunder, he said, "You alone in this wicked village showed us kindness. You shall be spared what is to come. As for your generosity, it has pleased us more than any feast of kings." He then took the hands of the old couple and bade them follow him. Bewildered but trusting, Baucis and Philemon obeyed. Mercury guided them out of the cottage, up a nearby hill far above the village. Once they reached the top, Jupiter told them to turn around. When they did, their eyes widened in shock. The entire village below was being flooded, submerged under a rising lake of clear water. House after house, those very houses that had barred their doors, sank and vanished under rippling waves. Only Baucis and Philemon's cottage remained untouched, an island in the forming lake. Baucis began to cry, not out of anger, but from the mix of sorrow for the lost and gratitude for their own deliverance. Philemon wrapped a comforting arm around her, and together they bowed their heads to the powerful gods in thanks for sparing them. When Baucis and Philemon looked up again, they saw that their humble cottage was undergoing a miraculous transformation. The thatch roof turned into shingles of gold. The walls of mud and wood became marble columns. The rickety door was replaced by a grand, carved portal. Their little home had become a gleaming temple right before their eyes, complete with a shining tiled atrium and white marble floors. The poor tools of their life, the workbench, the loom, were now elegant fixtures of a temple. Jupiter had turned their abode into a sanctuary where they could live out their days in honor and comfort. Baucis and Philemon could hardly speak for wonder. Mercury then said to them warmly, "Ask of us any boon you desire. You who have shown great piety and compassion, what would you wish for most?" The old couple exchanged a glance. They whispered to each other briefly. Then Philemon spoke, voice quavering with emotion. "We ask to be made the guardians of this temple, to serve here as priest and priestess for the rest of our lives, tending to the God's house that you have so generously given." And he looked at Baucis, who nodded, tears in her eyes. "When our time comes, let us depart this world at the same moment, so that neither has to live a single day without the other. That is all we wish." Jupiter and Mercury exchanged a glance of their own, one of approval and gentle amusement. They found nothing to fault in these humble requests. Jupiter proclaimed, "Your wish is granted," and so Baucis and Philemon became the keepers of that temple. For many years they lived there, serving faithfully. Travelers and pilgrims who came upon the temple were greeted by a kind old priest and priestess who told the tale of gods disguised and the importance of welcoming the stranger. Their story spread far and wide, inspiring others to charity and hospitality. Baucis and Philemon's days passed in serenity and love, and their devotion only grew stronger with time. Years later, when both were well past old age and nearing the end of their lives, the moment came for Jupiter's final gift. One evening, as the sun set golden on the temple steps, Baucis and Philemon stood side by side, feeling suddenly very tired. They gazed at each other with absolute love and knew the gods were calling them. They did not feel fear, only gratitude. Right before their eyes, Baucis began to take root in the earth. Her feet grew into the floor like gnarled wood, and her arms sprouted delicate leaves. Philemon, likewise, felt his body bark-covered and his limbs twist into branches. In a gentle, painless transformation, The devoted couple turned into two trees, an oak and a linden, right at the entrance of the temple. Their branches were intertwined, as if holding each other in a final everlasting embrace. Leaves rustled where once kind eyes had looked upon each other, and their trunks remained side by side. They had passed from human life, but not into death, rather into living nature. To this day, Marcus concludes softly, visitors to that sacred hill can see two noble trees, one oak, one linden, growing so close together that their foliage mingles. The locals know the truth. Those are Baucis and Philemon. And when travelers come to the temple and whisper a greeting or offer a libation at the roots of those trees, the leaves rustle together with a sound that's almost like two voices joining in blessed thanks. Marcus's voice trails off into the night air. The tale leaves a hushed serenity in its wake. Livia has listened with rapt attention, leaning into Marcus with her head on his shoulder. She lets out a content sigh. "What a beautiful tale," she says after a pause. "Humble hearts rewarded, and love everlasting." She tilts her face up toward Marcus. "It does make me think of us a little." Marcus smiles and presses a kiss to her hair. "I thought of us too," he murmurs. "Not that we expect Jupiter at our door, but the idea that kindness and love are the greatest treasures? Yes, it reminds me of you and me." Livia cuddles against him, and for a few more minutes they remain in a comfortable embrace, letting the story's gentle message settle in their hearts. The lamplight from the triclinium casts a soft glow on them from behind, and overhead the stars gaze kindly down as if in approval of the old myth retold. Eventually, a yawn escapes Livia, a small ladylike one that she hides behind her hand. Marcus chuckles, realizing the hour is late and the story has done its job making them wonderfully drowsy. "Come, my Baucis," he whispers affectionately. "Time to rest." Livia nods, smiling at the reference. Marcus picks up the remaining lamp from the dining table, and together they retire to their bedchamber. The little bedroom is cool and dim. Through the high window, a beam of moonlight slants in, illuminating the terracotta tiles and their simple wooden bed. Livia has already turned down the linen sheets. The air carries a faint hint of the lavender sachet she keeps under Marcus's pillow, a subtle fragrance to deter insects and soothe the mind. They undress by the gentle flicker of the single lamp. Marcus hangs up his tunic and dons a loose cotton sleeping tunic. Livia lets down her long hair from its pins and brushes it out. They slip beneath the light sheet, finding each other naturally in the dark. Marcus lies on his back, and Livia nestles against his side, one arm across his chest. The familiar warmth of their closeness is the final comfort of the day. The household is utterly silent now. Tiro has long since gone to sleep in his small alcove off the kitchen. Even the cat is asleep, curled in a ball at the foot of the bed. Marcus can hear nothing but Livia's soft breathing and the distant chirp of that persistent cricket outside. In the atrium beyond, the last red embers of the hearth cast a faint glow on the household shrine. The tiny figurines of the Lares stand in silent vigil over the slumbering house, as if to ensure that all remains well until dawn. Across the dark city, only a few isolated lamps still twinkle in distant windows, lone watchlights gradually snuffing out as night deepens. One by one, they surrender to darkness, until nearly all of Rome is at rest. Marcus feels Livia's breathing slowing further. She is already drifting toward sleep, secure in the crook of his arm. He turns his head to gently kiss her forehead. "Good night, my love," he whispers. "Good night," she responds in a drowsy murmur, snuggling a little closer. Marcus closes his eyes. His body is delightfully heavy and relaxed, sinking into the mattress. His mind wanders briefly over the day's events, but nothing pressing remains, only a mellow gratitude. He offers a final silent prayer of thanks, not to any one god in particular, but perhaps to all of them watching. Thanks for the peace of this day, for the family he cherishes, and for the gentle rhythm of life's simple blessings. His hand finds Livia's under the sheet, and their fingers intertwine loosely, even as they both begin to float into dream. Marcus can feel his heartbeat, slow and steady, and hears Livia's soft exhale matching it. As Marcus falls into deeper sleep, a few images flicker through his resting mind, perhaps remnants of the story and the day. He imagines himself and Livia walking together through a sun-dappled meadow, much like the one of his childhood memory, her laughter mingling with birdsong. Then they are sitting by a gentle river, as in the afternoon, watching the water flow endlessly. These peaceful visions escort him kindly into the realm of dreams. Under the watch of the moon and stars, the eternal city sleeps. The great noise of Rome is absent, replaced by a vast collective sigh of contentment. Within its embrace, in a quiet domus down a tranquil lane, a Roman citizen and his beloved wife slumber peacefully, hearts full. The gentle echoes of their day, soft laughter, tender words, the warmth of sunlight and water now weave through their dreams like a comforting lullaby. In this still and hallowed night, all is well. And thus ends another ordinary, extraordinary day in the life of a Roman citizen, slipping softly into eternal memory, ending in utmost serenity.